Help others. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Hi, this is Barry Shulam. Did you hear the news today in Israel? Idan Amedi, who is a father, an actor, a singer, a husband, was released from the hospital today. You say, well, what's special about Idan Amedi? Well, he was a actor on a Netflix series called Fauda. I'll show you some pictures of him. Maybe this will help you recognize him. He played in as a character named Sagi, and that's him on the right-hand side. Also, here's another image of him, an image of him in the army when he went into service on October 7th. So he got released after being in the hospital for 2.5 weeks, recovering from critical, serious shrapnel wounds all over his body. He is part of combat engineering, and his job is he leads a unit that sets up explosive to destroy the tunnels in Gaza. And the media was there an hour before an accident happened. They took people in and showed them the tunnels, deep underground, long, extremely developed, where about 20 different hostages were kept in different periods of time. They even showed drawings of, I think, a 5-year-old girl or a 3-year-old girl that was there that was released. So that whole thing was exciting enough in the media within itself. But about an hour after the media left, a tank noticed some suspicious activity. They fired towards it, and that tragically set off the explosion that resulted in 6 deaths and Idan Amedi himself being injured in that event. Now, why is this such a big deal around the world? Well, because we like movies. We like TV. That's a form of entertainment for us. It's a form of entertainment for me. When the Fauda series came out, I was glued to it because I knew individuals that had a lifestyle that mimicked what these Netflix series were showing the world. When we talk about TV and movies, there's a slang phrase in Hebrew called chai b'seret. And it's a phrase that we throw out to people when we don't think they're living in reality. Yeah, they see the world a certain way. They have a certain expectation. It's kind of idealistic. It's really not connected to the reality of what's happening. And it's usually used in the phrase of, what are you, living in a movie, you know? Come back to reality. The chai b'seret? You know, it's kind of used in that type of situation, right? So I started thinking about, when this got announced 2.5 weeks ago, about life and about movies. And it's interesting that in my lifetime, all these new series in the last decade or more of reality TV have come out, you know, and it's all scripted reality TV. It is nothing is reality as much as it is scripted. and all these dating shows and all these island shows and all these people being voted out. Um, but the sad thing is that from October 7th, what was popular as TV shows based on the history of Israel, the Entebbe raid, all these series about capturing Nazis or terrorists, Fauda since 2015, right? They all are just a gem for writing scripts for action movies and Hollywood movies. But we're in a situation today where we're not living in a scripted Hollywood movie. Idan Amedi made the point to state that, hey, this is not a scene in Fauda. This is the real world, the real stuff. People learned that he wasn't just an actor, that he was a true soldier, a patriot for his country, willing to die. And sadly enough, we all know that war is something that most people in America don't relate to. If you go back to 9/11, there's some sense in society of what it was like to feel being attacked, not knowing what's going to happen. The bombing in the Boston Marathon gave that feeling as well. But in Israel, this has been going on all of my life and before my life. 1985, there were 22 bus bombings in Israel. You say, well, what's important about that? Israel does not have school buses that pick you up from home and drop you off at your doorstep. You walk to school from first grade to your senior year, or you take public transportation. In the school that I went to in middle school, a couple of girls were on a bus that exploded and were killed. Parents in the neighborhood that were on the buses that exploded were maimed or killed. They came to school events all scarred up. Weren't the same, and their children were not the same. And the killer for me is that from those years of me being a teenager to the current state today that I am a father, not of a teenager, of a 21-year-old, that is the age group that is dying in this war daily. It could be my sons, your sons and daughters if you're living in Israel. That's the reality. And I ask myself, how did we get to this state that we're in today? How did they allow their children to get to this state today? See, I was taught to strive to be the best that I could be, to be a good citizen, to help others, to respect the elders, to love my country. As part of school, as part of scouts. I remember going, I was young. I could barely carry the kerosene cans. They gave us, there was 2 boys. They dropped us each. They took a big military truck, parked in the middle of Jerusalem, gave every set of 2 children an address, and gave them 2 kerosene cans and said, y'all carry these cans to this address. There'll be an old person in that house who's going to be thankful, might have cookies, might want to talk a little bit, but they can't carry these kerosene cans. So you go deliver the full kerosene cans and return with the empty kerosene cans back here to this location. I'll never forget that experience of learning to be of service, learning to be of service for people who have needs, who can't do it themselves. So the question that I have for you is, what reality are you living in? Is it a scripted reality like Hollywood? Or is it scripted by God? And I think there's 3 questions you ought to ask yourself. One is, do you know what you're living for? Idan Amedi on Instagram put a quote that said, he knows what he is living for. He knows what he is fighting for in this war since October 7th. Do you know what you're living through? Yeah. In essence, I don't know what you're living for, but how are you living? See, how you live is your story, is your script that you write. And the third question that you need to ask yourself is, what's keeping you from saving someone else? I want to go to Leviticus. Here, turn this guy off. Leviticus 18, verses 1 through 5. Adonai said to Moshe, speak to the people of Israel. Tell them, I am Adonai, your God. You are not to engage in the activities found in the land of Egypt where you used to live. That means your previous experiences. You're not to engage in the activities found in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you to. That means influenced by the place that you're going to end up in. And you're not to live by their laws. The next verse says, you are to obey my rulings and my laws and live accordingly. I am Adonai your God. You are to observe my laws and rulings. And here is why. If a person does them, he will have life through them. I am Adonai. And this phrase, life through them, I think is a very important thing for you to think about and consider. You see, in Hebrew, it's chai. And you might have heard chai, you might have seen it on Elvis's chest, wearing a chai when he was performing it in the late stages of his life. You might see it sold different places. You might hear about rabbis talking about chai in Kabbalah, the number 18, which represents the numeric value of this thing of life. They've kind of turned it later on in history to a good luck charm. Life is a good luck charm. I guess you guys know it from Fiddler on the Roof. To life, lechaim. Lechaim to life. So, how do we get to a state that we want life? If we want life, it implies that there's another choice, and that is to want death. You see, the Islamic terrorists of Hamas, they glorify the death. And what is death meant? What has death meant to America? There's approximately 199,000 remaining World War II vets in the United States today. That's sounds like a big number, 199,000. But to put it in perspective, there was 16.1 million Americans who participated in World War II efforts. 16.1 million. 407,000 Americans lost their lives as a result of having to battle people who chose the way of the sword, death. That's your history. My history is a painful history that is constantly being paid by the blood of generations sacrificing their lives to keep and protect the nation of Israel. So it kind of hit me that the parents who were teenagers when I was a teenager raised children to strive for death, to glorify martyrdom. Every day in the news, they talk about finding caches of weapons in schools, in hospitals, in hospital equipment, in tunnels, in mosques, in people's homes. They said, Idan Amedi made a statement today when he was released. It's unbelievable the amount of war and weaponry that is in society in Gaza. It's everywhere. It's overwhelming. A society that's invested in the hate of the Jewish people. A society that's invested in wanting war, wanting destruction, wanting annihilation of another set of people. And you say, well, is it really that bad? Well, I'm going to remind you that in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3 through 4, here's what it says. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of Jehovah from Jerusalem, and he will judge between the nations, and will decide concerning many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So that is the critical thing. We all want to get to that point in this world where spears and plowshares are hammered into pruning hooks. But for that to happen, the end of verse 4 is key. Not learning war means not teaching war. And that is what's going to have to happen for many generations in Gaza to get to the point where they don't desire to die and be martyred more than they desire to live. So the question is, what are you teaching your children? What is the world teaching your children? If y'all go back and read the rest of Leviticus 18, after it talks about a person obeying the rules and the laws and having life through them, through obeying the rules and the laws. The rest of chapter 18 talks about sexual immoralities, not because, these are rules and it's because these things were happening. If they were not happening, if the world was not in that state, Leviticus 18 would not be warning about those specific sexual immoralities that were graphic in that chapter specifically. And sadly, we're in a situation where we are seeing it in America, in the schools, of what's being taught. We made the choice to take our son out of school and put him in a private Christian school because the public schools were not up to the quality of values that we desired for them to learn, for them to become as individuals. I know some of you are homeschooling your children. I know that some of you are stuck in a situation where you can't homeschool, you can't change the situation that your kids are in. So what's left for you is to live your life through into them, invest into them in the hours that they're at home with you. And you must not forget that outside of your doorstep is not a movie, is not a TV script. It's a reality. It's a world that's living with immorality, with a value set that's different than yours, and therefore trying to judge the immoral choices by moral values is not equivalent. So decide to make a difference in this dark world. Go back to these 3 questions that I asked. Do you know what you're living for? What are you living through? How are you living your values? What is your story that you're writing? And in the end, what's keeping you from saving others, from making a difference? God bless you. Visit Netivyah International. You can help make a difference for young men and women and elderly in our food programs that we have, in the mental programs that we're starting this year for counseling. So God bless you all, and I'll see you soon on the next YouTube. Shalom. Help others, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.